Hey, Ron, if you've got one quote that you live by, what would it be?
From Julius Caesar. Manny Vidi Vici. I came, I saw, I conquered.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of I Know This Guy, the podcast where we dive deep into the lives of some of the most interesting people I know. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to I Know This Guy wherever you get your podcasts. By the way, my kids want me to say something about ringing a bell. What the hell's a bell?
So, Dad, I was looking at the spreadsheet today, and I really didn't believe my eyes.
Well, Hayden, your eyes are correct. We're going to be talking with Ronald McDonald today, and he is the nephew of Dicken and Mack McDonald, the founders of McDonald's. Not Ray Kroc, Dicken and Mack McDonald. And he worked on the very first restaurant, and he's worked with all sorts of different franchises. He's had all sorts of different businesses, and this is going to be one hell of a podcast.
Amazing. Well, let's get started.
When I tell people about you, hey, I know Ron MacDonald, they don't understand that you are the Ron MacDonald. Your uncles started McDonald's, correct?
Goals, yeah.
Yeah, uncles. They started McDonald's, and you've worked in that first McDonald's, didn't you?
Yeah, when I was a kid, they used to send me out there in the summer so I could learn how to be a good businessman as a kid. And the only thing I did was work for free, cleaning deep fryers and making French fries.
Oh, I'd really like to dig into that whole story because you were telling me back in the day about how and what happened, the real story behind it. And now there has been a movie about it, but you've tried to write a book and you've been blocked.
Well, we did write one book, and we did it when Dick was still alive. You might remember this one.
Oh, yeah.
The Complete Hamburger. And thank God I got it published before Richard passed, just before he passed. We had some real issues. I wrote the history of the hamburger, and the history of fast food, and the history of the family up to the point when we sold to Ray Kroc. We went to McDonald's and we asked for access to the archives so that we could get some of the photos. And they said, send us the manuscript. So I did. And then they sent me a nice letter, which I still have down here for posterity from their attorneys, saying, we can't stop you from using your name because it's who you are, and we can't stop you from writing a book, but we don't think you painted Mr. Kroc in a good light, so we're not going to give you access to anything. And that was it. The truth is difficult sometimes for people to accept, because when you have a mega billion-dollar corporation that has an image to keep up and the money to do so, it's just like the movie that they did with Michael Keaton called The Founder. Hell, if he was going to found something, he should have had Kroc burgers, and they ought to be offering a big Kroc. They shouldn't be putting out this. This was started out of the brainchild of Richard and Maurice McDonald. 1948, they had the McDonald Brothers Burger Bar. And they changed it around. 1955 is when they came up with a new menu and created a completely new dynamic in America called fast food. People don't understand the amount of science that was behind that. Mack and Dick drew out the entire restaurant on their tennis court and did time and motion studies going back and forth to make sure it was going to be efficient, okay, moving the equipment and how it was handled. Then we had a problem because the equipment available at that time didn't support this kind of industry. Back then, there was no such thing as a heat lamp for keeping food hot. So Richard went to a machine shop and took a bunch of old cow rod heaters, heaters that had big metal rods in them that glowed, and he had them designed to fit over the French fries and the burgers, so he'd keep them warm. But he didn't patent them, which he should have, or he would have got notoriety for that. The grills of that day did not have grease rings around them. They were just flat. And the grease would go off the sides and be caught in some nasty catch-all. So he had those machined all the way around, and he made sure that the heat was even across the entire grill so that they could cook huge numbers. We even had a problem when we started having the guys add ketchup and mustard, because they would use a squeeze bottle and one guy would go plop, another guy would go plop, and it wasn't consistent. So he went and designed this unit that would hold a number 10 can, which is the big cans. He put the whole can of mustard in there, and every time you pulled the trigger, it was a measured dollop. So it was actually always the same. And then, of course, we went to all disposables, which was a first, right? Everything was disposable. And even the spatulas that were available, we had to have those made because we needed a stronger, heavier spatula. The other ones had too much temper to them. So it was a lot of work getting it done. We developed a system that's in use today in every French fry that you eat, called blanching. Prior to that, and in some restaurants that you go to now, like Five Guys, they still don't blanch. They cut the potatoes, wash them off, and then throw them in the grease. We didn't. After we cut our potatoes, we blanched them, which is like parboiling, in a beef bouillon mixture. Then we let it dry, and they were pre-fried in a all beef shortening. And then we let it dry, and then it was fried last time. So there was more to it than just opening up a burger joint and getting it done. And of course, Ray Kroc was not our first franchise salesman. He happened to be a franchisee who sold us milk cake mixers. But the way McDonald's puts it out, even the medallions that were in every store, Ray Kroc, the founder, and the first store was in Oak Brook, Illinois. What a lie. Was not. It was in San Bernardino, California. But when you got that much money behind you, Norm, it's kind of tough to fight and go out and yell. And as you know, being around me, I have a big mouth, so I used to yell about it a lot. When my book came out in 1995, the main character for McDonald's was Ronald McDonald, everywhere, with the Hamburglar and the works. Once my book came out, I did 1,600 radio interviews, and I was on a lot of TV shows. And overnight, there was no more Ronald McDonald commercials anywhere. And the photos we were able to get offline ceased to exist. So they did everything they could to wipe out the existence of Ronald, even though I'm still here, okay? And a little tough, they still have the charity, so they can't get rid of the Ronald McDonald houses. Couldn't come back and change the name on them. But you don't see Ronald like you used to. As soon as the world found out there was a real Ronald, and I'm the only one, it kind of got quiet.
Just with talking about your two uncles, tell me a little bit about each one of them. How were they different from each other? One more technical than the other? One did more marketing?
No, Dick was the genius of the family. Really was. Smart, engineering, good. Mack was just a good hard worker. I mean, they worked the store every day, 7 days a week, for always. And they always worked together. You know, they came out to California from New Hampshire, and they went to work for a comedian named Mack Sennett. And they moved all kinds of backgrounds and backdrops and scenery and stuff like that for Mack Sennett's movies. And then they decided this wasn't their career choice. And they bought an old vaudeville theater, named it the Beacon. and turned it into a movie house. And then when they turned it into that, here again, they ran the projectors, they ran the concession stand. And after a few years of that, finding out the only place they made money was in the concession stand, they thought this is not the way to go. So then they opened up a hot dog stand and sold hot dogs and orange juice. And Dick was very enterprising. He went out and found that when Sunkist went through and picked the groves, they didn't go back a second time to get the other loose ones that fell and the ones that hadn't been ready. So he cut a deal and would buy those for 25 cents a bushel. Came back. They would squeeze the orange juice and blend it with ice. Well, somebody came along and thought it was a good idea and started Orange Julius out of that. So it wasn't real. I can't tell you. Burger King started because they came to McDonald's to buy franchises. Dave Thomas came out there. Old Man Hardy came out there when he started Hardee's. Everybody came to visit Mac and Dick, and they opened their houses. Come look, show you how we're doing it. And then we've had probably about a dozen competitors spin off from that, including the guy that used to sell us the equipment. He ended up opening up Burger Chef to try to compete. Everybody wanted to be McDonald's, everybody. But most of them really didn't understand what made McDonald's McDonald's and the dynamics behind it. And that's a tough thing. So that's what I did for, 40 years, restaurant consulting and stuff. And helping people understand supply chain management, downline, what proprietary products are, how you secure them, working with the rebates that come in from working with the national accounts. And this is a game of pennies, not dollars. And my uncles used to say that. My grandmother started saying it with her Gaelic accent. A man who watches pennies and dollars will watch themselves. Christ, everything's a penny. And Richard used to say, when you're making pennies, no one wants to take it away from you. And when you take a dollar, they all want to come. So they were pretty smart at that.
And you've worked in multiple, I know you were just mentioning being a consultant, but you've worked with Kentucky Fried Chicken and Wendy's and all these other companies as well, haven't you?
Well, I never worked for KFC. I went and opened up Dave Thomas's first franchise in South Carolina. And I was very young and had to explain to the franchisees that Ron knows more about fast food than you guys, so please listen. Then I built the Western Family Steakhouse chain with Bill Britton. Then I built the Longhorn Steakhouse chain with Alex Ramontanen. I worked for Ponderosa Steakhouse and managed that, developed a 3-bean salad that they ended up using in all of their stuff. Then I started the Ale House and sold it. I started the Villa Inns and sold it. You know, I would take a concept and move it to a new level and then sell it. That's work and turn. I got bored, so I couldn't really stick with them for a whole long time. And of course, some of that's my greatest success stories, and one of it's my greatest disaster stories. So you have to learn. But I always learn from my failures, just like I try to learn from my successes. But a hard lesson learned is a lesson learned a little stronger.
So I have to tell you, you are a foodie, and you have, and Hayden, you're on this line. I took one of your recipes that we had a hot dog competition, and you just said, I have got the hot dog, the winning hot dog. Try it. You'll love it. You'll never go back to another hot dog. I can tell you, whenever I cook this hot dog, the kids line up. They love it. So tortilla, fry the tortilla, the hot dog, or put the hot dog in the tortilla. You cut it open. You put cheese with peppers in it, and you deep fry it. And yep, it's a heart attack on a plate, but I'll eat a few of those every time I cook them.
Well, every time I've entered a contest with that, it's we call it a donkey tail. we end up winning. And of course, you take a good all beef hot dog, you split it, you soak it in hot water. It's called leaching for a few minutes. Then you place it in a flour tortilla. Make sure you trim the edges of the tortilla so they're squared. When you put the hot dog in there, I use Sorrento's taco cheese blend and put it in there with all the seasonings, wrap it tight, and deep fry it for just less than 2 minutes. Turn it, and then you prepare some nice jalapeno mustard and dip it like an egg roll right into the mustard. And when you do it for hors d'oeuvres, we cut them and put toothpicks through them, little ones, and they come out great. Yeah,
I'm
love to
already
cook. I write cookbooks.
Mouth is watering already thinking about it. So I remember you telling me the only way, and you were very adamant about this, the only way to eat a hamburger is with mustard.
Yeah. I think there's a curse on people who put ketchup on hamburgers.
Yeah.
Funny thing, you know the reason why McDonald's colors are red and yellow? Little history there. It's the color of the flag of Scotland. We're Scottish. A red lion on a yellow field. A lot of people think it's mustard and ketchup. Nah, it's not mustard and ketchup.
I know you've had a very colorful life. So tell us a little bit more about what you've done in your history?
Oh God, I've been to 56 countries.
Yeah.
I served President Bush for 6 years on the Business Advisory Council. I represented a small little group called Mensa when I was on there. I helped open up Albania with Dr. Berisha and Prime Minister Maxi after Enver Hoxha was overturned. Worked in, Slovakia, and worked in there with them trying to develop a new aircraft plant. So I've been all over the world and done business in lots of places and had a great life. A lot of charity work, and had hospitals we delivered to Africa. I used to spend time over in Lome, Togo in West Africa. I had a piece of a company called Eurofruit. I used to own 50% of Handelshaus in Germany, which is a machinery manufacturing company. We had Glencoe Oil and Gas when I was in Texas, as you probably remember, and Glencoe Trading, Glencoe Oilfield Equipment. Then you helped me try to get into domains and start 10th Power Media.
That's right.
Which I lost my tail on because the stock market crashed right after we put all that money into it.
Oh, I remember that.
Over 8,000 domains I was paying for. We get all ready to do a public launch, and the .com market that's great.
So I guess it's really similar to what's going on right now. There's so many businesses out there. Some are thriving. Online businesses, for the most part, are thriving. But there's a lot of people out of work, and there's a lot of businesses that are going under.
I can tell you stories that would make you cry. Bar owners, especially, because the bars are still not allowed to open. But the rent goes on, utilities go on, the insurance goes on. The employees that have been laid off because they can't get back to work. What are you going to do? I think the failure rate of the small restaurants, the mom and pops, is probably going to be in the 50 to 70% range.
Boy,
they can't survive. Very few of us in the business ever make big money in the restaurants. I mean, people think oh, great business. Look at this. Look at the volume they got. Let's analyze one. All right. Right now, you can get a quarter-pound hamburger for 99 cents in most places, whether it's Checkers or Rallies or even McDonald's when they run through. Have you ever priced ground beef at the grocery store? I mean, you can't find ground beef for under $3 a pound. So that means a quarter-pound burger is 75 cents. Now, even if we cheapen it, like most of the burgers you get out there, they use a combination of muscle meat and organ meat. Okay. So it's cheaper than that. But how cheap can you make it? And then you got a bun that's going to run you in a 20-cent range. Then you got the condiments, the utilities, the wrapper, the labor. And on top of that, you're paying a franchise or 6%. And then you're paying 2% of your gross for advertising. So it's 8% off the top. So when you start doing the numbers of, you have to do huge volume to make any money at all. And it only takes a stumble like this to hurt you, like the places that weren't set up for drive-through. They've suffered terribly. I know some donut franchises that got open and they didn't plan for big drive-through business. There's a lot of these food courts. What do you think happens to the restaurants and the food courts? There's nobody in the shopping malls. And yet you're having to pay these huge fees every month. And the downhill is, what do you think is going to happen to those landlords? They own all this property that's based and predicated on a return on investment. And if they can't open, they can't pay the landlord. The landlord can't pay the bank. So you're going to be looking at a lot of auctions coming up here, a lot of bankruptcies, a lot of failures, and a lot of destroyed lives, which,
yeah.
What about you? We were talking the other night. I don't know if your listeners know that this big guy used to be a sparring partner for Lennox Lewis, the heavyweight champ of the world. And he even knocked him on his ass once.
I didn't say that ever.
And then I look at him with this beard.
That's where all the power is, right here.
You've had quite the career yourself, young man. You got to brag on your prowess a little bit, not just interview us.
Oh,
but what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What do you think is going to happen now, business-wise, to this economy, to this world, when we finally get past this? Or the question is, will we get past it? Now, we all have ideas and we all have theories, I'm sure, as to why it started, how it started, where it started, and who started it. But no matter how you look at it, you cannot deny that your life is going to be changed forever over this. Now, some of it may be good, some of it not so good. I mean, we just got kids to go outside and play. And now we tell them it's safer to stay inside. Your entire socialization right now is like this. This is not the way we socialize. You and I, my God, we used to go out and I'd have 15, 20 people show up for a happy hour and we'd have a good time and everybody get to know each other and we'd laugh and we'd have fun. And those days are gone. They're just not there. You talk about the mom and pop shops. Unless they have an internet presence, they're gone. They're done. They're toast. I mean, Sally with her small boutique that tried to attract people on a local basis. That's not going to happen. I look at the shoe chains that have closed up. Hell, you got Neiman Marcus closing down. J.C. Penney's closing up. You can't even imagine the impact that's going to be to change the way your life is. How many people now are used to ordering through Grubhub?
Yep.
Or DoorDash? I mean, let's don't go out to eat. No, it's not safe. Let's stay home, make it come to us. If you'd have told me when I was back in that restaurant business starting that a company like DoorDash and Grubhub would be making money delivering, I'd say, hell, only pizza guys deliver. Right? It's just, now, I just got notice from Wawa. You get sub sandwiches delivered from them. I mean, everybody's into delivery now. But that seems to be what it is. I mean, Skype. Look at us. We're on Zoom.
Yeah.
So instead of my friend coming down to visit me, I talked to him 3,000 miles away over an internet line.
And you were working in oil. I remember that. Yeah, you knew the president, or and no, not yet. And what were you doing? You were running. You were the chair of young entrepreneur. What was it that President Bush had you set up in?
I ended up becoming part of the President's Business Advisory Council.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And basically, we were focused on small to medium-sized business. What can we do? What tax relief can we give them? How can we encourage them to survive? This country was based and founded on small business, not big business. I mean, it wasn't until the turn of the century, the last century, that big business really became an industrialized part of it. It happened at World War I, and then with Henry Ford and Standard Oil and a few others starting to get big. Think about it, it's not that long ago. It's the 50s and 60s when franchising started. And when franchising came about, now you had brands that spread all over. Used to be the only franchises you had were car dealers. Now it's, come on, everything you want to, from 1 hour martinizing, house cleaning. I mean, you can't throw a rock and hit a business that's not franchised up somehow, because the entrepreneur spirit is still there, but the ability to gamble and take that risk of failure is not in our DNA anymore. Now it's easier to buy an interest in a established brand than try to build your own. And I can understand that. The last chain I started was Don Benito's Burritos. And I came up with the concept, a regular burrito concept on a heat and serve basis. If you remember, I used to own Dixie Southern Foods and started the heat and serve trend for barbecue. The first guy to ever put heat and serve barbecue out. Up to then, everybody had to cook their own or go to a barbecue place. Anyway, I sold that to a gentleman up in Kentucky. And I just don't see it going anywhere anymore. A friend of mine called me last week, a good friend, Bobby McKinnon. You met him. He's an attorney here in town. You've had drinks with him here.
Mm-hmm.
And he's looked at a concept that is a health food type concept, a smoothie place with kava and a few other things. Says, hey, I need you to get involved in this and help me lay this out and tell me what we're going to do. That word. The way we save money is we don't do it, because you can't make money right now. You just can't. The rent is super cheap because so many failures are out there. God. Ellie and I we went to Tarpon Springs yesterday. You remember Tarpon. Mm-hmm. Great community up there where Congressman Bill Arakis is and his family. And we walked up and down like we have for decades, enjoying the sponge docks and the water and the Greek food, which is good. And everywhere we looked, Norm, it was restaurant for lease, fully equipped, closed for rent, on and on and on. The souvenir shops shut down. I mean, just signs up saying, for rent, owner will vacate with 2 weeks notice. So the landlord's keeping them in there just to have somebody in. And that's not going to change anytime soon. And just like I would tell you, and I told Bobby, do not put money into one of these ventures at this time, unless you need a tax write-off. And if you need a tax write-off, then we ought to get involved. But your chances of really being able to initiate something new and exciting, your chances are less than 50-50. And that's not good. And that's what we were empowered to do by President Bush, and try to figure out how to make business thrive. But how do we make it thrive in this atmosphere? We have the same kind of social unrest we had back in the 70s when we came back from Vietnam. You had the same kind of Spanish flu disaster, which crippled the world. And it's like a 1-2 punch. And we're just waiting for the third one. Now everybody's anticipating, when are we going to have another spike? So it's like, you're a boxer. How many punches can you take, body blows, before you can't recover and stay in a ring? And I think we're looking at a lot of that right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I've wondered about that myself. What is going to be the next one? Is it going to be the spike? If you take a look at the Spanish flu, it happened. It wasn't the first time around. What wiped out everybody was when it hit the second time around, when it went to Europe. So, Ron, why don't you tell us about meeting the president? I remember that you had called me to come down, and you said, "Hey, Norm, you want to meet the president? I'm going to be meeting him. Come on down and, get to meet President Bush." So I got on a plane, next day, flew down, and pretty excited. Anyways, Secret Service came, and I guess they blocked me because I was a foreign national and I didn't have security clearance. But anyways, you got through. So how did that go?
That was a mess. But I had the Secret Service came and got me.
Yeah.
And I was the first one to greet him when he got off the plane. And we were doing a fundraiser for Congressman Bill Rackus, and he came down to help us out with that. And the first thing he did, if you remember, I had my hat and boots on. I looked like I was still in Texas. And he looked at me and he said, "Ronald, looks like you ought to be having coffee with me in Crawford instead of being here in Tampa." And what can I say, Mr. President? You're right. Because when I knew him, I was in Texas, and, we belonged to the same oil man's club and all. He wasn't even governor then. He just owned a baseball team. So when I first got to know him, he is quite a person.
Yeah, and not just a baseball team, by the way.
No, but then he became a great governor. Then he became a super president. And he's done a ton with the country. So's his dad.
Yeah, and so I was just going to say, we can't forget about Jeb.
Jeb did a lot for Florida down here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember one of the other things, just being, riding on your coattails, walking around. I was always 4 feet behind, there's Ron and there's Norm about 4 feet behind. But just being able to go and meet some of the people. You remember, do you remember this? There was a group of people that came in. They came in with $1 billion? And they were doing something in the US, and you had a meeting with about 4 or 5 different people. I went with you, and they were representing the Sultan of Brunei.
Yeah, that was Dr. Muhammad Salih and his group. Yeah, and it was $3.2 billion.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, we were all set to build Hollywood here in Florida.
That's right.
Another Hollywood. We were negotiating on the acreage. They had built in Dubai the largest radio recording center over there, and we had a lot of money lined up to bring it in and try and get it done, and did our best to try and get it done. But the West Coast does not like competition. They have enough trouble with Vancouver, which steals a lot of TV shows. Mm-hmm. The idea of what we have here in Florida, my God, we're a right-to-work state, number one. That means that the union powers don't have any power here, okay? That was one of the first issues right there. The unions wanted a stronger negotiating position if we were going to do this, because everybody's in the union out there, from screenwriters to actors to you name it. Cameramen are in the union. And then, of course, we had great weather here. We looked at a location between Tampa and Orlando. Congressman Bilirakis was going to help us get an off-ramp right at the property. And Governor Chris flew down, remember? He flew in his plane, Charlie. And Charlie and I are still good friends, even though he's now a Democrat. And I do talk to him on a regular basis. And the state was all ready to help us in every way we could. That was an exciting project. I really, really, really had wished that had gone through. It would have meant tens of thousands of jobs here in Florida, and it would have brought industry to us like no tomorrow. And I do. I try to put things like that together. I still do on a much smaller scale. I'm working with a minority group now that has a SAM registration and an 8A registration. That is certified minority registrations. And we're starting to manufacture masks, surgical masks right here in Florida, in the US, and everything in it is American. The material, the elastic, works. We have got to stop having our dependence on foreign entities for things like our pharmaceuticals, our safety equipment. Every one of those N95 masks were coming from China. They send us the disease and they make billions selling us the masks and the respirators and the gowns. And here, American industry sits back and said, oh, duh. So we sacrifice too much for cheap labor. And I think America is learning that dealing with the lowest bidder is not always the most beneficial thing for this country or for us. You realize all the antibiotics are coming from China. They cut us off. We'll have people dying of minor things because they can't get the amoxicillin they need or the penicillin they need or something else because it's all manufactured overseas.
You've started a lot of different businesses, and can you tell me what's been your most successful business or anything in life?
I don't know how you would say even go there. I mean, like, how do you measure success? Is success measured in the amount of money you made? Is it measured in the number of jobs you created? Is it measured in the people you managed to help? I mean, what is success? That's a really broad question. And when you get into it, Norm, I can be really proud of a lot of things I've done, from delivering hospitals in Africa to helping literally hundreds of small businesses in lots of ways survive. And I'm still doing it. I'm still mentoring on a regular basis. When most people are retired, I had meetings last week. I'm helping some new companies, not necessarily startups, but giving them a new perspective on how to re-energize or restructure their business, especially now that supply chains are disrupted. You've got to look at some really new aspects of how you're going to do business. You cannot just rely on getting on a computer and dropping an order in online and expecting stuff to come in. You have to know you have a stable supply line on what you're going to do. I don't know how I would even answer that. I've done what I could to help in lots of ways. I've got very few complaints. I mean, as I said, I'm turning 74 next month. I've been to all these countries, got the same great wife for 54 years, and got great friends. One of them sitting across from me now on a monitor, and I don't lose track of my friends. So I'm a rich guy in lots of ways, lots of ways. Health issues, got a few. But I think God keeps me around just to piss off people because I'm still here, you know. And hopefully he's going to keep me around because there's a lot more people need pissing off. And I'll be glad to do it. So.
And we need to go back to our fishing hole.
Yeah, before. And I don't want you to say we're going to wait for my 100th birthday, okay? Maybe we plan for the 75th at the worst.
At the worst. Okay. You have my word. I don't want to use the word failure, but are there any things that didn't go your way, Why didn't they? And what did you learn from them?
There's always failures. And if anybody tells you they learn from success, they're lying. Because you learn from failure. You know that from boxing. You know, you learned how to keep your left hand up because you got hit with a right cross too many times. So you finally learn. So it takes pain. Oh, there's a lot of things I would have done different. I mean, I look back and some of the choices I made and some of the things I didn't do always come. But I never found it helpful to reflect too much in the past, because then when you do, you can't look forward to the future. Biggest question I get all the time is, geez, I'm surprised you're still working. And get that from my wife too. But I'm one of those individuals, if I don't have that daily challenge of something. I looked at so many of my friends, Norm, that are my age. I've got one that's, he's younger than me. He's 60. And he's retired Army. And then he worked for the post office, retired from them. And I've watched him. He's physically great, but I've watched him mentally atrophy. Because he doesn't exercise that muscle up here to keep himself going. And look at you. You've made some big transitions in your life and what you've done. You're doing one now. If we'd have talked 5 years ago and you said you were going to be in a broadcasting doing podcasts, you said, not me. I'm not going to get in front of a camera and do that stuff. I can almost tell you what you would have said. I know you do well. So life hands us opportunities and disappointments. And it's a matter of your character, how you deal with those that make the difference. I wrote 2 books in last year. The history of African martial arts and the history of Japanese Aikido. I'm working on 3 more books right now. At the same time, I'm running 3 businesses, and I'm still trying to get developed all my websites that we have. I find it gives me purpose to have things to do. Some of the biggest mistakes, please, I was spending $80,000 a year to keep 8,000 domains up. I mean, I lost probably, I think when we did 10 Power Media, I lost a little over 1.6 million. I lost $3 million on Tunis. Of course, I couldn't stop 9/11. It was a good idea, but still, it was a failure, regardless of purpose. Just like if I bought that office building. My God, I'd be making payments out of my savings because I can't get tenants in it right now. And I don't think I'd ever go back and look at it again, even if they dropped the price $600,000-700,000, because I don't see it recovering. See, people are used to working from home now, like you. Mm-hmm. They're telecommuting. They don't need to go in. The new house that I'm building, my office has been set up strategically so that on one wall I have a backdrop over here for when I do my podcast. And when you flip around on the other wall, I've got a smart board. So if I have to do any of my coaching and presentations, it's there. Hell, you remember I used to go to my office and I had all those people working in there doing all our work. That's not going to happen again. I'm never going to try and put together an office with 40, 50 employees. If I did, I'd hire contract labor. People that work from home, I do that now. I've got a webmaster in Virginia and another one up in South Carolina. One over here in New Tampa, an SEO guy. But I don't ask them to come to an office anymore. Mm-hmm. One, I don't need that overhead, that expense. And we change the dynamics of what we do. So yeah, I would change a lot of things. I would have been in nanotechnology. When I got out of the oil business, I would have gone right into nanotech and stayed in there. I own a very small piece of a company with some hot patents out in Texas. And I could have spent more time with them, and that's Global Water. And we've got some new technology coming out that's killer on some filtration systems. But I didn't have time for that. Move on. So can't dwell on it, though.
Right.
The only thing I'm really, really sad about is I never really got to write that book while my uncle was alive. And, we had people lined up in Hollywood that wanted to do a movie on it. That was before Michael Keaton's. But here again, it's just one of those great projects for the future. We'll get to it in another decade, right?
There we go. So, Ron, you like cigars. You've liked cigars for many years. In fact, your family was. Were you living in Cuba?
Yeah.
Precastro.
Back and forth until I was 12.
Yeah. You had some health issues way back in the day. You weren't going to smoke. And I got your humidor and some of the Precastro cigars in it. So thank you so much.
Those were a gift from Dr. Manush, who was married to Princess Sofala of Saudi Arabia. And I remember when he gave me that box, he gave me this beautiful box of cigars, and I'm saying, wow, these are awesome. These Cohibas, isn't that great, And then I went out with his son-in-law and handed one or two of them out at the bar, and he said, what are you doing? I said, I don't mind sharing my cigars. He said, those are Precastro Cubas. He says, Dr. Manush bought those at auction at Sotheby's for you. You're handing out 100-pound cigars. I said, oh, God. So I kept those cigars, Norm, and I had one on my birthday every year until they finally ran out. So,
oh, boy.
They were so strong, you could only have one of them. McHugh was beautiful. It was beautiful. I mean, I learned how to dive and fish off of Moro, right where the castle is, on the point there.
Mm-hmm.
I used to watch the cigar rollers as they would sit on the side of the streets, hand rolling all those cigars and putting them in blocks and pressing them down to hold their shape. Yeah, pretty good. Good memories.
You don't remember the first time we met?
I would have to think on it.
Okay. The first time we met was through a mutual friend, Rex. He said, you got to come and meet Ron. So I went over. You were in a bar. We were standing beside each other. I didn't know it was you. You were handing out cigars to everybody left, right, and center. We started talking, and I was telling you how much I like cigars. And you knew I knew a little bit about cigars. So you said, you reached in your pocket and you go, these ones here? You took the labels off and you're giving them out to people that didn't know anything about cigars to, why waste a good cigar? Then you said, oh, but in this pocket. And then you gave me a cigar, and that's how we met.
Yeah. Well, I always used to carry two types, because you got people who will take a cigar and smoke it, but cannot appreciate it. And then you have the ones who like Macanudos and some of the other great cigars that I used to carry all the time. So Dunhills, oh my God. But I'd get the other ones that were like $2 a stick. And if somebody wanted one and I didn't know if they were really into cigars. And the first thing I asked you, I'm sure, was, what, do you like a light or dark wrapper? Because if you don't care, then you don't know cigars. Okay? Because we all have our own tastes in the flavor profiles.
And what were you doing in Africa?
Business.
Ah.
Always business.
Yeah. Oh, you were setting up some, you were working with hospitals.
I did some of that, yeah. Some charity work, but mostly I was in business.
Yeah.
I would, I bought in produce from Holland, mushrooms from Holland, Morocco. I would bring in fruits and vegetables. I was in Yugoslavia when it was Yugoslavia, because Spain stopped exporting Spanish black hams for all the tapas in Europe, and I was buying 10,000 Dalmatian hams out of Yugoslavia and importing them over to Europe. Frog legs out of Bangladesh, mango slices and mango flavorings for RC Cola out of Pakistan. So yeah, I had a water company in Pakistan with a friend, and I had businesses all over the world. I loved it back then. That's when travel was a little different, though.
So look, we're going to be winding down here, and at the end of every episode, I have a question that I ask every guest. Ron, do you know a guy?
I talked to a friend of mine, an inventor, brilliant guy, smart as a whip, with a very famous name as well. Anthony Tesla.
Wow.
And I asked Anthony if he would appear on your show, and he said he would be more than glad to if I asked him.
Well, that's fantastic.
I will get you his information. And Anthony invents all kinds of stuff. I think it runs in the genes.
Mm-hmm.
And he's super smart. He's a CPA and a financial planner, an inventor, businessman, all that stuff.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on. I know you got a busy schedule, but I'm glad you made some time to get on and help us out with the podcast.
And I wish you was doing it in person, which I hopefully will do before the century runs out again.
Oh, yes, it will. And I will be there. Hey, guys and gals, thanks for listening. For more great content, please like, subscribe, and follow I Know This Guy on all social media platforms. I Know This Guy relies on listeners like you. Please visit our Patreon page to find out how you can help.